Thank you for joining the NCDPI, North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, Learning Through Languages informational webinar today. This webinar is in collaboration with the UNC Global Area Studies program, and it's focused on learning more about the Learning Through Languages High School Research Symposium. We're going to talk about the actual competition itself and the composition of teams as we get going. Today's agenda and presenters are pictured here on your screen. As I said, my name is Anne Marie Gunter. I'm the World Languages Consultant at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Joining me today is Emma Harver. She's the Program and Outreach Coordinator at the UNC Middies Center. After our welcome today, we'll talk a little bit about proficiency for level 3 courses and above from our World Language Essential Standards, which are our proficiency-based state standards. Then Emma is going to talk about the Learning Through Languages competition in a very detailed way. She's going to give an overview and the objectives of the competition. She'll discuss the student team guidelines and resources available. She'll talk a little bit about judges and prizes, and then she's going to talk about the December 12th event and how to apply with the student team. And we'll finish today with questions. To start out, we like to use poll questions and things like that throughout the webinar. And so let's go ahead and start with our question. What are your goals with today's webinar? Are you a teacher getting information for a student team application for this competition? Are you a teacher or administrator gathering details about the LtL, Learning Through Languages? Are you an educator earning a contact hour for licensure renewal? Are you an individual curious about the LtL competition? Or do you just want to remain anonymous on a Thursday afternoon? With the poll questions, what I do is launch the question, and when I do that, it should come up on the screen so that you can choose your answers. This is a select all that apply, so go ahead and put your answers in so that we can see what your goals are for today's webinar. Please go ahead and finish up voting. Just click on the screen for the answer that you want. And then we can go ahead. Some of you may have to hit submit on your screen as well, depending on the browser that you're using for this broadcast. Let's take 10 more seconds to get answers in, and then we'll move ahead. All right, thank you for answering the question. We're going to go ahead and close, and then we can share the responses. All right, as you can see, there are an equal number of people here who are teachers getting information for a student team application, or a teacher or administrator gathering details about this competition, perhaps to share with others. There's also someone who's just curious about this and wants to know more. And though we didn't have anyone choose that they're an educator earning renewal credits, I will say that you receive an email receipt for our World Language webinars documenting 1 contact hour towards a CEU, which is 10 contact hours for licensure renewal if you have state licensure. All right. Before Emma begins with all the details of the competition, I wanted to share with you how our state standards are structured for our high school programs, because that's the kinds of classes we're going to be talking about today for our student teams. As you can see, our state standards, our World Language Essential Standards, that's what WLES means, are divided into 3 different programs. K-12 classical languages like Latin and Ancient Greek, K-12 dual and heritage languages like our dual language immersion programs or heritage language courses, such as Spanish for native speakers, and then our K-12 modern language programs. And we have these for high school from levels 1 through 8, actually, for alphabetic, logographic, and visual languages. In the competition that Emma is going to talk about today, proficiency for level 3 courses and higher is what's most critical for our teams. For our alphabetic languages for this competition, and those are Arabic, French, German, Italian, Russian, and Spanish, you see the proficiency outcomes chart that's in the state standards for those levels for alphabetic languages. This chart obviously uses the actual proficiency scale, which is our national scale of proficiency in languages. And you can see how language builds and grows over time with proficiency in different skill areas. If you teach an alphabetic language, keep in mind what the colors look like here and what the different proficiency levels are for outcomes in these courses, because the next slide is a little bit different. It still has our proficiency outcomes chart from the state standards, but this one focuses on logographic languages. And the logographic languages that in this competition are, of course, Chinese and Japanese. Notice that some of the skills develop at a different rate because if you have English-speaking students learning a logographic language where the writing system is very different, it takes a little bit longer for them to learn to first read and then write in the language than it would if it were an alphabetic language. So we have two different charts and expectations adjusted for those different learning needs. All right, let's go ahead and get started with Emma telling you about the competition.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, and thank you to DPI for collaborating with us on this webinar today. So welcome to you all, and thank you again for your interest in the Learning Through Languages High School Research Symposium. This is going to be the 4th year of the program, and each year the program has changed and really grown and expanded. So we like to do an informational webinar each year to go over the program overview and objectives, the guidelines that may have changed, and more. As Anne-Marie mentioned, my name is Emma Harver, and I am the Program and Outreach Coordinator for the Duke UNC Consortium for Middle East Studies, which is a collaboration between the Middle East Studies Centers at both UNC and Duke University, and today I'm joining you from Duke University. This will be my 3rd high school research symposium for this program. And in addition to our consortium, I should mention that this program is really a collaboration between many different units at UNC Chapel Hill and Duke University. And those are the African Studies Center, the Carolina Asia Center, the UNC Center for European Studies, the UNC Center for Slavic, Eurasian, and East European Studies, the Duke UNC Consortium for Middle East Studies, and the UNC Duke Consortium in Latin American and Caribbean Studies. And all of those links are live so that when this presentation is listed on the World Languages page, and we'll show you where that is at the end of the webinar, you can click on those links and learn more about each of our various centers and the work that we do. Each of our centers provide resources for K through 12 teachers to learn more about our world regions, and this is one project that we all collaborate on together. So Anne-Marie, if you can navigate to the next slide. So what is Learning Through Languages? The Learning Through Languages High School Research Symposium is a friendly competition. There are prizes involved, but we do encourage a spirit of collaboration and congeniality. But it is also a unique way for your world language students to conduct and present their own research in their language of study. So students are studying, they're choosing a research topic significant to a world region, in 6 different tracks, and we'll go over those tracks in a few moments. Those tracks correspond with the various centers that sponsor this program. So you'll see there's a Europe track, an Asia track, a Russia and East Europe track. Students participate in teams, so they engage in cooperative learning. They create a particular style of writing aimed at a scholarly audience. And they also, at the symposium itself on December 12th, they use their speaking skills and their presentation skills in the target language, so they get speaking practice. Participation in the program includes not only language study, but also cultural studies, and it addresses a number of DPI's essential standards for world languages, such as engaging in interpersonal communication, understanding words and concepts in the target language, presentational communication, and many more. And we hope that students learn different kinds of research methodology, they become more literate in technology and critical thinking, and to also encourage the learning of new academic vocabulary that they might not have already experienced in their study of that language. Okay, we could go to the next slide. So we'd like to ask if we have any people who have participated in the Learning Through Languages Symposium before, or if we have mostly new new and interested teachers and administrators today. So if you could answer in the poll if you've participated in Learning Through Languages Symposium, maybe if you've participated multiple times, or if you're new to the program, or other, if you're just interested in learning more, or you aren't in a position where you could participate.
It looks like everyone has already voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results.
Wonderful. So it looks like everybody is new to the Learning Through Languages Symposium, which is great. So hopefully after this webinar, you will have a better understanding and idea of the scope of the program and what is involved. So eligibility, this is a big question about who can participate and the composition of those student teams. So participating students are encouraged to be at level 3 or higher, or heritage speakers of the following languages. These are Arabic, Chinese, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Russian, or Spanish. We have had students participate in all of these languages except Italian in recent years. Students participate in teams of 2 or 3, and each teacher may bring up to 3 teams. We have a limited number of spaces for the teams, and so rather than one teacher bringing their class and being the entire symposium, we want your students to interact with other language learners around the state. And so teachers are somewhat restricted on the number of teams they can bring. However, we do encourage you to conduct this research project with all of your students so that they all have the experience of doing a research project in the language that you teach. Students, as I mentioned, will choose from 6 regional research tracks, and those are Africa, Asia, Western Europe, Latin America and the Caribbean, the Middle East and North Africa, those are kind of hyphenated tracks, and Russia and East Europe. So those are the 6 tracks that students might be interested in researching in. And to ensure that students are competing against other teams with similar language ability, because as Anne-Marie mentioned, various language skills develop at different rates depending on the language of study. Teams may either compete in an intermediate or advanced category, and this is up to the discretion of the sponsoring teacher to choose the category that they feel best represents their students' abilities. So if you have really high performing students who are in level 4 of the language, you might want to put them in the advanced category. But if your students at level 4 are more intermediate low, in reading, writing, speaking skills, you might place them into the intermediate category. Sometimes people ask why we allow heritage speakers to participate in the symposium. We do that because speaking a language, growing up speaking a language doesn't necessarily mean that you have the research skills, and this is a great opportunity for those students to use their language and celebrate their heritage in an academic environment with additional support. So if we could go to the next slide, which is...
Before we do that, we do have one question that probably is best answered here. One teacher wants to know, can a student participate in more than one language team?
A student may not participate in more than one language team. They may participate in one team, and the reason for that, well, there are multiple reasons, but a logistical reason is that the judging rounds all take place at the same time. The student would not be able to be in the same place twice. That student would need to choose which language or which team they're participating in. Thank you for that question. So this is related to the eligibility, but we'd love to know in what language group that you teach. And these language groups are based on how UNC Chapel Hill has grouped languages into departments. So we have a Department of Asian Languages, which includes Arabic, Chinese, and Japanese, among others. But for the purpose of this symposium, these are the languages that are relevant. There's the Department of Romance Languages, including French, Italian, and Spanish. And then there's the Department of Germanic or Slavic Languages, which teaches German and Russian to our students. So this is how we've grouped this question, but we'd love for you to let us know what language you teach. And other could be if our administrators who are attending aren't necessarily fluent or teaching a language.
We're getting really fast at the poll questions. Everyone's already done, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results.
Romance languages, what a surprise. I have a feeling that many of you are Spanish teachers, which is great. I think it's really great to see all of the research projects when they come in different languages. The Romance languages are definitely our highest number of students who participate are in Romance languages, but we do have representation from these other languages. So we always like to think it might inspire your Romance language students if Arabic or if Russian is not taught at your high school, that maybe they might be interested in exploring these languages at a different point in their lifetime. So thank you for sharing. So this is kind of a snapshot overview of what students do in the Learning Through Languages High School Research Symposium, and we'll delve into each of these parts more in depth. But essentially there are 4 components, really 3 related to research, and the 4 is the day of the symposium. But students will write a 2 to 3 page research paper on a global topic in one of those 6 tracks. And for our other languages, there are different page and character requirements depending on what language it is. If it's a logographic language, we have different requirements. But for our Romance language attendees, it's 2 to 3 pages. They create a project visual that illustrates their research findings. And here in this photo of one of the past symposia, you can see this group has chosen to create a trifold poster board. And they also present their research to judges who are UNC and Duke language faculty, graduate students, and staff in that language that they're studying at the symposium at UNC Chapel Hill. And finally, they have the chance to network with UNC and Duke faculty, staff, students, and other high school language learners from throughout the state. And so the symposium is a really great chance for them to come together and network and make connections for future careers or future college applications. And here in this photo, you can see there are several photos embedded in this presentation from last year's symposium, the 2017 symposium. And you can see that the students make their presentations in one very, very large space. And it looks chaotic, but it is a good system, and it allows the judges to circulate on a timed table, which we'll address. But this photo kind of gives you a feel for the hustle and bustle of the symposium itself. So we could go to the next slide. So we'll talk a little bit more about the research project. As I mentioned, these are the 6 tracks. You can see them listed here. So Latin America and the Caribbean is one track. The Middle East and North Africa is one track. And there may be some overlap between these tracks, and that's okay. The world doesn't, adhere to a strict map. So students may study a topic related to North Africa in the Africa track or the Middle East track. It's not a clear cut. There is definitely some gray area there. But we do encourage different language teams to conduct a research project in any of these tracks, regardless of the language they study. So for example, a Spanish team is more than welcome to study a topic related to the Middle East and North Africa, or a French team is welcome to study a topic related to Asia. And in this way, the program aims to promote a better understanding of the world through cross-regional study, while demonstrating the relevance of practical language skills across disciplines. Students, through their research, through maybe researching a different part of the world that you might reference often in your class, helps them see how other parts of the world might view a global issue. So the way, a country in Latin America might view an issue is very different than the way a country in the Middle East might view an issue. And they get to experience different global perspectives. And the research topics should be contemporary and focused. They can relay historical information for context, but the paper should really focus on the contemporary issue. And they can build upon what they already know, and the research paper should really demonstrate their own thinking, original student work, but backed up by their research. Okay, we can move to the next slide. And here are some samples of suggested research topics, and this is just a small smattering, and this hyperlink there will take you to a Google document with several other research topics suggested per track as developed by the UNC Area Studies Centers. So one example for Africa might be, which countries in Africa have the strongest economies today, and what is the relationship between strong economies and democratic governance in those countries? For Asia, we might study, with India currently being the world's fastest growing economy, what role does India have to play in securing stability and peace in Asia? For Europe, with a focus on Western Europe, students might study the effects of the refugee crisis. For Latin America and the Caribbean, students might explore the effects of deportation on immigrants back to their home countries in the region. For the Middle East and North Africa, students might study how the political climate in Egypt has changed since the Egyptian Revolution of 2011, and if the movement was successful in achieving its goals, and what the current status is in the country. And lastly, our last example for our 6th track is what is the nature of Russia's renewed political influence on the world stage, and how much of it can be contributed to Vladimir Putin's leadership style. So you'll see that all of these research topics are highly, they're all hot topics. I think by requiring students to do contemporary research, they have the chance to choose topics that are relevant to them and that really pique their interest. We could go to the next slide. And as we mentioned before, the research project does have 3 components. So it's the written paper, the project visual, and the oral presentation. And there are very descriptive and robust guidelines for each of these, as well as a rubric that is posted in a Google Drive folder, which is our participant portal for the Learning Through Languages program, and that's available on our website. And it is also going to be hyperlinked into this presentation, so you can see those exact requirements. This is a brief overview. The paper and citations should be conducted in APA style in accordance with the standard practices of the social sciences. And we have, in our resources slide, we have a link to an APA style guide so that your students can have help with that. And those resources can be either in English or the target language, depending on the discretion of the teacher. The research paper does have different requirements, again, for the format and word count per language, but I will let you refer to the guidelines for that specific information. The research paper will contain, or should contain, the following sections: a title page, an abstract page in which the students outline the research question and give us a concise summary of the important points and any main findings and conclusions. And that abstract exercise really prepares them for university writing. It should also include their main body, the main part of the research paper, as well as their reference sections, the references section, which will be in that APA formatting. The students should use at least 5 sources. You'll see that one primary source document can be in any language. At least one should be in any language, and at least 2 should be in 2 primary or secondary sources should be in the target language. So students will be doing research in the language of study. The project visual is a complement to the written paper, and it is a visual representation of their main research findings. It should include both imagery and language, and is really a chance for your students to be creative. This is that it will be judged on the use of language as well as creativity and an innovation. And teams can choose to use a poster or display board. They can create a short video. They can make a 3D model. So we really encourage them to get creative here, and they will have the chance to explain this project visual to the judges. And we have some photos on our next slide with examples of those research project visuals so you can see. And the last component, the 3rd component, is the oral presentation, which happens at the symposium at UNC Chapel Hill. There will be 3 rounds of judging, so your students will interact with 3 different judges, and those judges' scores are averaged to give us the team's final scores. And it's great because you can see the students' confidence really building throughout the symposium. They do give the same presentation 3 times, but it also gives them the chance to interact with different people who speak that language, different judges, and it also gives them the chance to really rehearse, and students really get in a groove by the third presentation. It helps build their confidence in speaking language and really owning the research that they've developed. And so each student in the team will be expected to give a short prepared oral presentation on one part of the research project. Each student must speak at least for 60 seconds, and they may refer to a note card. So hopefully that helps them feel more prepared, especially because they do it multiple times. And then there will be a 5-minute question and answer period with the judge. And the judge will ask at least 3 questions, and each team member is expected to respond to at least one question. And teams can briefly huddle prior to answering the question. So we try to make it a less stressful environment by giving these supports and having the students speak with multiple people multiple times. So we could go to the next slide. So here are some photos of the team. You can see most of them have chosen to create a poster board, though that's certainly not the only thing they can do. At the top 2 photos, you have 2 groups of students studying Chinese who studied the impact of the refugee crisis on Europe. So again, you see that cross-regional study, regardless of language. Those students were from Raleigh, North Carolina. And then the bottom 2 photos, you see there's a Spanish team from T. Wingate Andrews High School who studied police brutality in Brazil, and a French team from a school in Chapel Hill who studied the impacts of the Arab Spring on human rights in Tunisia. And you see that they have a computer out, so their visual project also involved a digital component, and that's welcome and encouraged if that's something your students are interested in doing to show their research. And we'll go to next slide. And these are some of a few resources that we have collected for our participating sponsoring teachers, including the CLAC Consortium. And if you all aren't familiar with that, this is the Cultures and Languages Across the Curriculum Consortium, which is a movement that encourages students to really use their language, moving beyond just grammar and mechanics, but really using it to study the world and in different content contexts. So we have information about that Languages Across the Curriculum program at UNC and at Duke, and specifically, there's the APA style guide that I mentioned, as well as some general writing information on what makes a good research question and conducting a thesis statement from the UNC Writing Center. There are resources for their oral component. And then the last resource there you'll see is the participant portal that I mentioned. That contains the program guidelines, the judging rubric, so you have that in advance so you know what your students will be specifically scored on. It also has the program guidelines, and I might have already said that, but it has a lot of other resources as well for helping your students write in various languages, and we will continue to add the resources to that participant portal. So I highly encourage you to check out that portal. And you'll see in red at the bottom that school support funds may be available. Traditionally, we have been able to raise funding to provide school support funds in terms of substitute scholarships. So the symposium is on a Wednesday, and we aim to make the symposium itself is free, but we would like to make it even easier for people from across the state to participate. So we hope to have substitute funding available, as well as some travel funding, and we will know about that very shortly. So when you apply, just keep that in mind, that it is very likely that we will have school support funds to support you in bringing your students to the symposium. So let's go to the next slide, which is another poll or group question. So now that you've seen some of these sample topics and suggested topics, and I should note that students are neither favored nor penalized for using these suggested topics. They are merely suggestions to get their brain juices flowing, but they really can choose whatever contemporary topic they find most interesting. So we're interested in knowing which contemporary global topics that you think they would be interested in researching. Are your students really passionate about a subject? Do they continue to bring up something, a particular topic or subject in your classes? We'd love to know what your students might be interested in.
So go ahead and think about that question and go and type your answers into the question box when you're ready. If you're interested too, the handouts that Emma has been talking about and will be available afterwards are also in our handouts section on your control panel. So if you open that up, you'll see a handout section and you'll see that there's an LtL suggested research topics document that you might want to draw from for this question. So we'll pause here a moment while you do that and go ahead and type in what you think your students would be interested in researching. We have a couple of topics coming in. The first one is the impact of demographics and refugees in the future of some African nations. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a great topic. And I should note this is actually the first year that the Africa Center has participated. So this is the first year that we have an explicit Africa track.
Another topic is the environmental issues and social justice issues.
Mm-hmm.
And a third one is, they said topics about immigration and the effect of separating families might be something their students would want to research.
Great. Those are all great contemporary topics that I'm sure your students could find plenty of resources for in researching. I should note the environmental and social justice issues topic is excellent and would need to be narrowed to focusing on our specific world region and could be even further specified by focusing on a specific country or community or movement.
We have a couple more, I guess one more. One person said their students might be interested in studying the rise of nationalistic far-right parties in Western European countries.
Another great question.
That looks like all of the topics for now, but if you have others, feel free to go ahead and add them to the question box.
Great, thank you so much. So our next slide, we will be talking about judging and prizes. So as I had mentioned before, the judges are from UNC and Duke, and it provides your students the chance to meet with people who might become their future professors one day, as well as instructional staff and graduate students who are fluent in the language and for whom language is an important part of their research or work. And students and I think teachers are always very excited to learn about the prizes. Students are recognized in many, many different ways. The symposium is not only a research project, but we really want to celebrate language learning. And so there are multiple prizes to celebrate different students' strengths. And we'll go over those briefly. You'll see that prizes will be awarded, a group of prizes will be awarded in the intermediate track, and a group of prizes will be awarded in the advanced category for the best use of written and oral language, best scholarship, and most innovative and illustrative project visual. Again, so we're addressing different students' strengths. Maybe your students are really creative and that will be judged. You know, there's a prize for that. Maybe your students are really interested in diving deep into a particular topic, and so you might be able to win the best scholarship award, or maybe they're really skilled with the oral language, and so there's an award for that too. And you'll see that students are they're being judged against students who, it's a mix of languages, so students who speak other languages in the intermediate category, But we have these categories parsed so that the judging is fair. Prizes are also awarded within each regional research track across both categories. So everybody who studies the Asia track, everybody who studies the Africa track, and so on, for the best overall research project, as well as an honorable mention. So students maybe have a really excellent project on the Latin America and the Caribbean, and they would be eligible to win a prize for that. And then we also have a new prize. It was new last year, so this is the second year that we will be doing a Student's Choice Award. So there'll be a fourth round of presentations after the lunch, and we'll go over the flow of the day in a moment. But students will have the chance to present to one another, and it really allows students to learn about each other's scholarship and, again, make connections with other students who are interested in learning languages across the state. And students will have the chance to vote for their favorite project, and that team will be given a Student's Choice Award. So it's a fun way to give students the autonomy and the chance to also say what they think is important and who they found impressive, and it allows their voices to be heard as well through this award. So our next slide, we'll talk about the symposium itself. Here's a good bird's eye view of the symposium. It's held in the FedEx Global Education Center on UNC Chapel Hill's campus, which is a really beautiful open space. It houses many of UNC's global activities, including our study abroad office, an office for international students, our curriculum in global studies, as well as all of the centers that I mentioned who are participating in putting on this program. You'll see that students are at round tables and they have their research projects displayed. And amazingly, the noise control is okay during the symposium, but students do present at the same time to the judge. The judge will come and visit their table, so the students don't have to worry about the stress of moving. The judges rotate. And so there are 3 rounds of judging, as I mentioned. Between each round, there is some transition time, so the students have the chance to breathe and regroup. And then there is lunch provided by UNC and Duke, so the students have the chance to relax and eat lunch. And that is followed by the round where students present to each other and vote for their Student's Choice team. And that is followed by a Student Global Hour. So this Global Hour is when we all head into an auditorium, and the hour showcases various global topics and issues, and it's an experiential learning experience for your students. So they kind of have the taste of interacting with different student groups at UNC. Last year we had several different presentations, quick presentations during this Global Hour to highlight different world regions. For example, we had an Afro-Caribbean person come in and do a drumming demonstration. We had a Ukrainian woman sing folk songs. We had a Filipino student organization do folk dance. We had a presentation on Middle Eastern refugees. And so the Global Hour is really a chance for your students to be introduced to various issues in various parts of the world in a fun and engaging way. And that is followed by an award ceremony where we announce the winners of these various prizes. And that is followed by an optional tour of campus. So if your students are interested in staying, if you and your students are interested in staying, we will arrange a campus tour for interested parties. And I should note at the top here it says click here for the LtL video. We did create a kind of informational video with footage from the symposium itself. So if you're interested in seeing more and really continuing to get a feel for the day of experience, the video features our program staff as well as judges who are able to talk about their participation in the program. And you see different students presenting their research, and it really gives a good feel for what the day looks like. It's about a 3-minute video, so if you're still curious and wanting to see more, I encourage you to click on that video. Thank you. So how to apply? So hopefully your questions have been answered. We'll have the chance to ask more questions in just a few moments. But if your interest is piqued and you'd like to participate in this with your students, you can visit the website here, areastudies.unc.edu/LtL. to apply and also preview the application questions. So it is an online application through a survey software. And once you've entered the survey software, it will ask you to continue to answer the questions and click through until the application has been completed. So we have an additional PDF document that contains the application questions. So you can look at those and gather your answers before submitting the application. The application is pretty brief, and it asks about the composition of the student team, what they might be interested in studying, the track that they would like to participate in, and then it asks about their goals for the research, for participating in the research symposium, and why they're interested in doing so. People ask, why is this an application process? We used to, when the symposium was a smaller scale event, it used to be a first come, first served registration process. But as you can imagine, that became a little inequitable. We want to ensure that people from around the state, and we encourage people from all across North Carolina who are high school, studying world languages in high school, to participate in this program. We wanted to make sure that they had access to this process as well, so we have moved to the application process. But each team that is interested in participating needs to have a separate application form. So if you're submitting applications for multiple student teams, make sure that you do a separate application for each team. And the application deadline is next Friday, which is September 28th. And the following Friday will be the notification of acceptance, because we want you and your students to be able to have plenty of time before the symposium on December 12th to work on your research projects and figure out how you're going to incorporate this into your syllabus and the flow of your class. And so we'd like to let you know as soon as possible that you have been accepted and your students have been accepted to participate in the symposium. And if we could go to the next slide. This is another poll question. So we're nearing the end of our presentation, and we've left time to answer your questions that may not have been answered. But after learning more about the symposium, its goals, and the different components, we would love to know from you what you think is the most beneficial aspect for your students participating in the Learning Through Languages Symposium. Would it be using oral skills in a practical and content-based project? Would it be beneficial for your students to engage in global studies and learning about the world? Would it be most beneficial that your students are participating in cooperative learning in their target language? Would it be most beneficial that they're using creativity and 21st century skills to create a project visual? Or would it be most beneficial for them to have exposure to both UNC and Duke University faculty, staff, and language instructors? And take a moment and think. That first poll response is a little too long, but it was using oral and written skills and a practical content-based project.
It looks like people are putting their answers and choosing what the most beneficial aspect they think would be to their students about participating in the Learning Through Languages Symposium. Let's go ahead and take about 10 more seconds to finish up those responses. All right, thank you for that. Here are the responses.
So it looks like the overwhelming response would be using oral and written skills and the practical content-based project, which is great. And looks like other folks are really interested in having their students engage in global studies and learning about the world. And that other folks really think it's valuable to have exposure to UNC Duke faculty, staff, and language instructors. not only to help your students experience what learning the language might look like in college at UNC or Duke, but really anywhere, be it a community college, a different state school, or beyond. Thank you for your responses. So now we have about 10 minutes left, and we'd like to open it up to you for questions. If you have, after this time, you have additional questions, or you speak with your students, or if you're an administrator and you're speaking with other language teachers, and you have more questions, my contact information is listed on this slide. Oh, that is a typo. My phone number is 919-962-6732. So there's an extra 8 in there that we'll take out before we post this online. But my email address is correct, and it is there. And so you can feel free to email me at any time or give me a call with questions. You'll also see our website there, areastudies.unc.edu LtL. And there you will find these handouts about the rubric and the scoring sheet, the program guidelines, how to access the participant portal. There you'll also find additional resources, more sample research topics, as well as our videos. So that's really where most of our information is housed. There's also a frequently asked questions PDF that we've put on that website, where students have, or teachers have asked many questions in the past, and so we've kind of generated a frequently asked questions document, so that might also be a good reference for you. We'd love to answer any questions that you all might have.
We do have one question that's been posted already to the question box. This teacher wants to know, is there a chance to postpone the application deadline for a few days? She said her district was impacted by Hurricane Florence, and they're going to be closed until next Wednesday, which means they would only have a total of 2 weeks. They'll have a total of 2 weeks out of school, and that means that even though the students have been working on topics, they would only have a couple of days before the application deadline to make decisions.
I think that is an excellent question, and I apologize that I did not consider that before. Yes, we would be very willing to postpone the application deadline due to the devastation of the coast and the fact that schools are closed and will continue to be closed through next week. So I will check with our planning team and develop a new date, but certainly having that maybe additional weekend to really think through topics, I think is a very reasonable request and one that we are happy to accommodate. Do we have any other? And I wish you luck in the rebuilding process. The photos from Hurricane Florence have been really devastating, so we're all thinking of those families, teachers, and schools affected. Do we have any other questions?
We got a thank you from that teacher who really appreciates the extra time to work with students on a topic.
One thing that I did not note while you're maybe considering questions or thinking, I should have mentioned more about the So all teams, as you might have gathered, must be accompanied to UNC by the sponsoring teacher from their school. So they may not come on their own. They do need to come with you, their sponsoring teacher. This teacher does not have to be the student's own world language teacher or even a language teacher. We will allow administrators, librarians, and or teachers from other disciplines to be sponsoring teachers. However, we request that the sponsoring teacher and not any other teacher really should be the main mentor for the student's research project. You should be available to answer their questions about conducting research. That's why a librarian could be appropriate. You are responsible for guiding their selection of a research question, as the most recent question kind of addressed, and generally being a cheerleader for the students both during the day, during the project preparation and on the day of the symposium. And so we recommend, if you have a sponsoring teacher of students, if you're not a world languages instructor and you teach in a different content area, that you maybe partner with a world languages instructor to help students with that language component. But teachers in different disciplines all have many valuable resources in helping students research different aspects of the world, different contemporary global issues. And on the day of the symposium, we ask that teachers do not participate or assist during the team's oral presentation, and that you remain a respectful distance away from your team during each judging round. We've had issues with teacher interference in the past, and the oral presentation really should be your students speaking and demonstrating their knowledge. And points, it's come to the point where points may be deducted for teacher interference during student presentations. So there will be chairs spaced throughout that large room where you're able to take a seat. And we know that you are so proud of your students. It's so wonderful to see them excel and really own their language knowledge and have the chance to present. So we ask that we all give them the chance to shine and really be the stars of the show. Do we have any other questions about the symposium, preparation, application?
While we're waiting for any additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and show you where these materials will be posted after our presentation today. We want to make everything available to you, so if you need to go back to review something or if you want to share something from this presentation with your students, you can easily do that. So what we will do is we will post this presentation, we'll post the slides, as well as a recording of this broadcast and all of the handouts and things like that that were made available and links to websites on the World Languages Wiki. You see a picture of it there in the middle of the navigation bar. We posted on the presentations page, and so I'll go out there and show you where that's located while we're together. This is our main homepage. There's a lot of information for you about World Language Study in North Carolina here. But on that left-hand side, you see there is the Presentations tab. And if you click on that, everything is presented in alphabetical order. It may display a little bit differently depending on which browser you're in, but it's still be in alphabetical order. And you can see that you can link right down to LtL, Learning Through Languages Symposium information. And there you've got the information from today. Like I said, our presentation slides and recording will be posted. There's a link to the Learning Through Languages website. And then there are handouts that you can get either all at once from the folder and download them, or individual ones that you may want to use.
And I should note, in addition to those wonderful resources that Anne-Marie has already posted, for sponsoring teachers, we will be conducting another professional development webinar for sponsoring teachers that goes more in depth on assisting students with research in various languages. We partner with Duke and UNC faculty and librarians to help deliver that webinar, so they're able to show resources at the universities and speak from their own personal experiences and helping students craft a high-level, scholarly research paper in different languages. And so more information will be made available about that in early October. And that webinar will also be recorded and made available to all interested sponsoring teachers.
Well, I don't see anyone asking any more questions, although we'll stay on the line a little bit longer just in case you have them. We do thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you wanting to learn a little bit more about this competition and hopefully get your students involved.